I've just come in from my outbuilding where I found my rosemary was starting to almost like sprout and grow a little bit. Where we are, rosemary won't overwinter, so I have a plant in a pot and I put it in my garage and I don't water it very much to get it to go dormant for the winter, and then it survives and it starts growing again in the new year. But this year, the garage that it's in has a lot more light and it's a lot warmer because we've been heating it because we've been doing a painting job. So I plucked all these tips off that I was planning on doing in the spring, and I'm going to bring them inside and I'm going to try to root them over the winter in the hopes that maybe I can get some new rosemary seedlings come. I'm stripping off the bottom couple inches on the plant here to just make it so when it's in the water it's less likely to get all slimy and gross. So I got all of the ends stripped and into a jar with a little bit of water, and then I'm just gonna sit it on my windowsill and cross my fingers for the best of luck and that some of these actually will start to root. This isn't going to be a huge loss if it doesn't work out, because I did have to prune my plant anyways. It wasn't like this is stuff that I'm picking off and not being able to eat now. And if they don't root, they'll, you know, it's rosemary, they'll just dry out and I can eat it later as rosemary. So I'm excited to see what happens. It's been a couple weeks now and the rosemary has actually put some roots on, which I'm surprised. It grew some roots actually fairly quickly, but they're starting to look a little bit iffy in there. I think a few of them are maybe getting moldy. It's hard to tell because sometimes they can just do those super fine hairs, and the roots aren't actually in the bottom of the water. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna rinse off these cuttings, and the ones with roots I am going to be putting into little pots and potting up. So because I'm worried about these seedlings, I'm going to be pulling them out of here and putting them into the water that I have to give them just a little bit of a wash. And this one you can see all the roots. Here's an example of one of the ones that has me nervous. It's not showing up super well on the camera, but there's almost like a fuzz to it. And I don't know if it's starting to get attacked by, you know, different molds or funguses, or if it's just, you know, one of the first steps in rooting. I brought in some pots and some potting soil. I had to bring this in yesterday so it could defrost. It was actually frozen because it was out in my potting shed and it's winter. I only have so much space for these, so I'm going to be planting multiples in each of these pots, and then I can always pot them up in the future. So I put a little bit of soil into these pots, and then I'm going to place my rosemary in and start to cover them up. You want to handle these seedlings really delicately. You don't want to just jam them into the dirt. What I've been doing is I've been poking a hole down to the bottom with my finger. I've been doing 2 because I'm putting 2 in each one. So you can see those 2 holes there. And then I've been taking the plants. Here's one that has some of the most roots, so I have to be the most careful with this one. And I've been gently placing them into those holes. And then from there I get some dirt and I make sure to get some along the back so the roots aren't pressed against the plastic, which kind of pushes the plants in. And then I very gently pack the dirt in. And you want to make sure that the dirt is getting filled to the top, gently packed, so all those roots are covered. And then here I have them. I just have them in a piece of recycling as a tray. And so there's going to be 8, or, you know, if they all survive, 16 plants in total. So now they're just gonna sit like this in my kitchen for a little bit longer to hopefully strengthen up those root systems and get to be nice, strong little plants. It's been 2 months and a lot of these seedlings have made it. I'm pretty impressed. At this point, they all have very obvious growth that I can see on it, so I know that these have survived and are hopefully going to continue to thrive. At this point, if they die, it's due to pure neglect, not because I didn't propagate them properly. I started with 2 in every single pot, but as things progressed, a bunch of the stems just died and then I pulled it out, and so in the end we have 8 out of the 16 original stems that have survived and have made it, which I think is pretty good. These seedlings were very compromised. I did a lot of things that you're not supposed to do. First of all, I took the cuttings from these in the winter, and the time that you're supposed to take the cuttings is in the spring. You're actually supposed to cut the newer early spring growth to try propagate. That's supposed to be the stuff that you'll have the most success with, whereas I was trimming off some pretty big, heavy, woody sticks. But despite that, they still did send out the roots when they were soaking in the water, so it wasn't a complete loss. But if you were to start trying to propagate your rosemary right now, you'd probably have better luck than what I had. The other issue that I ran into is I think I just had too many stems stuffed into that one jar, and because of that there was very little airflow, and that led to just bad conditions for the mold to grow. So these, you know, they were getting attacked. They were not in the ideal rooting situation. But despite that, a bunch of them did happily root, and even though there was that mold getting on there, it seems, I mean, obviously washing it off, they were able to still keep rooting themselves and staying alive. It's been 2 months since I put them into the pot, and ideally you'd hope for more growth than what mine have at this point. 2 months is a pretty good chunk of time, but they've also been in my fairly dark window, so I think just the limited light, all those negative situations they had to overcome has led to just very slow growth. If you had them in a nicer, brighter spot, you know, you'd use nicer cuttings and all that, I think that within 2 months instead of this entire process, which is 3 months, you'd have a nice strong plant ready to go out in the garden. I'm going to divide up and repot the plants that have 2 per pot, and I'm gonna start getting them to live in my greenhouse, which is where I am right now. They'll have a bunch of other little seedling friends to hang out with, and hopefully that'll give them a boost and get them growing strong for summer. Let's see what we have here. Let's open this up. Definitely limited roots going on in there, but there we go. Full-on plant. And same here too. here is the mother plant, which is looking very happy with the prune that it got. It's putting on lots of new growth because of getting hacked back, so definitely don't be too worried about getting in there and giving a hard prune on your rosemary. It'll definitely appreciate it. So if your rosemary is starting to grow like crazy and you think it needs a bit of a prune back, go for it. And then maybe even try to root some of those cuttings. It's amazing how easy this was. I was told when I first took those cuttings there was no way they'd turn into plants, and I had a surprisingly good amount of success on it. And if you love gardening, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We are starting a farm this summer and we are going to have many plants growing here. It is going to become plant paradise very shortly. I have all my seedlings behind me that I can't wait to get started into the ground and get growing. I'll see you guys next time.